So looking at number 6 on practice test 1, says the following data contains household energy usage in Westchester County home, or in a Westchester County home in the year 2019. So we have all this information. Assume that the sample data comes from a population that's normally distributed. Okay, so in part A, it is asking us to find the interval containing the middle 95% of the data. All right, so assuming that it's normally distributed, that would follow the empirical rule. All right, so that would be related to x bar plus or minus 2s. All right, so that's x bar minus 2 times the standard deviation, x bar plus 2 times the standard deviation. All right, so we could use Desmos for that. All right, so as long as you know our rule, we're in good shape. So what we need is going to be in the functions menu under stat. So we type in mean, and that's specifically the column x1, the usage is in x1, so it'll spit out the mean. Now, just to make life as easy as possible, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this equal to some value. I'll call it just x. Will it let me call it x? Yeah, it'll let me call it x. All right. And then the standard deviation, I'll call that s. You don't actually need to do what I'm doing there in terms of x equals and s equals in order to get the numbers. It'll just make the next step a little bit simpler. All right, so x bar, I'll make a little note here, is approximately 539.167. 3 significant digits is where we're going, so I want to make sure I do that. And S is approximately 233.580. All right, so I need to run my computation, but now what I can do is I could type in x bar, or sorry, well, it would be x bar, but there is no x bar feature, like the notation on Desmos, so I'll just use the x that I called the mean, x minus 2s. Yeah, poor choice in using x. I'll use m for mean. All right, so m minus 2s. This way you don't have to type in the decimal again. That's really what I'm getting at here. All right, so by defining the mean as some other letter, x is typically a variable, right? So it thinks I wanted to create a graph. So it was a poor choice on my part. Right? But by using something that isn't part of an equation that you would normally use to create a graph, like x or y or z, you stand a better chance of selecting something that will be reasonable. So x bar, not a function in Desmos, or not a form of notation in Desmos, so I'll use just something else like m for mean. Right? But by typing in m minus 2s, it will now take what I have stored in for m and subtract from it 2 times what I have stored in for s. All right, and so then I could do a quick duplicate and change my minus into a plus. All right, and so what that gives me is the interval that I'm looking for. I'll write it here, but then we'll put it in a little box there. 72.0059, I'll put the whole decimal, 593.25.342, comma, and then 1006.3274008. All right, so rounded to 3 significant. After the zeros stop, we start counting. So 1, 2, 3, and that's where we would cut it off and round appropriately at that point. All right. In the next case, there are no zeros after decimal, so I could just go straight to counting 1, 2, 3. So 327 is where I'd go. So 72.00593. And then 1006.327. All right. Now for part B, it says state any unusual value. So any value that falls outside of this interval is going to be considered unusual. So any value not in this interval, so here's a nice interval, any value not in this interval is unusual. All right, so I go through my data set. I'm looking for anything that's smaller than 72 and change. All right, everything I have here is in the hundreds because we're only looking for the usage values. All right, so this is not referencing anything besides usage, so I'm only looking at these values here. So I'm looking for anything that would be lower than 72, all right, so that didn't happen, or bigger than 1006. So it looks like I have, well, it looks like it's just the one value. All right, so the fields that I put there leave a possibility that it could be more than one, but you would just type in only the appropriate value or values. All right, so let's see. I'm just double checking to make sure. Yeah, there's nothing else. All right, so that's all she wrote there.